Welcome to Click Moments and Passionate Pursuits the Unfolding, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new insights, inspiration, and perspectives along the way. And we're your hosts, Beth
and Bridget Querns.
And today we're going to talk about something that has been on my mind for the past few hours. This is something that has plagued me and I'm geeking out on, and Bridget has willingly told me that she would talk to me about this. So how do we get the most out of life when there's this phenomenon that exists, that we can think about something happening, but until we actually have this embodied experience, we really don't even know what we're moving towards or what we're moving away from. So what we're deciding to do and what we're deciding to give up on, we don't even have the most information to make that decision. So sometimes, like when we're thinking about our dreams, it's like we have this vision for what it's going to feel like, and we know that it would be great. But because we don't know what it really feels like to live that life, we are much more willing to give up on that. And it would take an incredible amount of fortitude to keep going and that to get that long-term gain when we really don't even know if it's going to be as amazing as what it is that we think it is. I know that's a lot, but when I said this to you, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously. When I said this to you, what did it do in you that you were like, yeah, I want to lean in and talk about this? What did you hear?
So what it hit on in my thought processes was, if we are ever going to experience something that we don't currently experience, then we've got to bridge the gap between not knowing what it feels like and having no embodied experience of it, and embodying the experience of it enough to either draw it towards us and help it manifest in our lives, or to know what to do in order to seek out that experience. But if we have no we've got no system where we're currently touching that experience, then how do we get there? And
Exactly.
so what I love is that we're kind of marrying this theoretical problem that you brought up. And the first place I went was, oh, well, there's got to be research around this. And I did find some. So let me know when you're ready to hear. Okay.
Bring it. Yeah.
So the American Psychological Association published this. I believe it's an article. It may be a chapter from a book, but the title of it is An Introduction to the Theory of Embodied Cognition.
I want this.
Theory of Embodied Cognition. So it starts like this. So I'm going to read a couple paragraphs from it, but I'm just going to start with one, and then we can dig into that, and we'll do one at a time.
Okay.
So it starts with Arthur Glenberg, the preeminent cognitive psychologist who has extensively tested and written about the theory of embodied cognition, starts his course on the topic with questions such as these. Do left-handers perceive the world differently than right-handers, such that, for example, right-handers like objects on the right more than objects on the left, but lefties like the opposite? When you say about a potential date, he leaves me cold, do you literally feel cold? Does getting a Botox injection to remove frown lines make it difficult to understand a sentence about sadness? And when you are leaning backwards, are you more likely to think about your past than your future? These questions clearly implicate the body in thought, and the surprising answer to all is yes. The empirical evidence that provides this answer supports the theory of embodied cognition.
So what do you take, given my initial introduction of this topic, and when you read that, what do you think?
So there's clearly a way in which we experience life where our experience of even just the thought of something must be embodied to the extent that it activates, for example, a neuron in a part of our brain that is connected to that thing. So I'm going to read as we get a little bit further about, for example, when I say a sentence about, I'm going to write you a letter, saying that actually activates a part in my brain that I use to physically write something.
Mhm,
It
mhm.
activates the same area. So we know for a fact that if we are talking about something that we have no embodiment of, we actually can't fully grasp it and understand it.
Right.
There's a gap in
Yeah.
that cognition.
Right. Right. So this, when I think about this, this makes sense. Like you mentioned, and this is something I'm curious about, is bridging that knowledge.
Mm,
Because when you're talking about this, so something that we're presuming that we haven't really said outright, that I want to make sure is clear in this discussion, is that when we are having a thought about something, the strength of that thought is like just this lightest little like, whereas if it's like whenever you experience the same thing. So it's like thinking about riding a bike does something to us, but very different than I'm imagining riding a bike. I've ridden a bike. I know what it's like to ride a bike. I ride a bike regularly. It does something different in the brain. So when I say I'm going to ride a bike and I'm somebody who rides a bike, I'm riding a bike. It's going to happen. Whereas if I say I'm going to ride a bike and I've never ridden a bike, but I really want to ride a bike and I don't have a bike, it doesn't have the same strength and
mhm,
it may not happen, right? So thinking about this, like if why this is important is if you use this metaphor and you think about the bike is just one example, but let's say instead we replace that with your dream. You have a dream in life that you want to live in this location. You want, to be married, you want 2 kids, you want to have a professional job, you want enough money to go on vacation. If you're doing something else and you're stressed and you're overwhelmed, but yet that's the vision you have for your life, you've never lived that life a day in your life. So you have no idea that it's worth really working hard for. To
mm,
not have something happen today to try to make that happen, to act towards that, to call up a college and say, "Hey, I want to do this application." You're so tired in today because it's not that life and you've never lived that life that you don't know it's worth making that call.
mm,
But if you had just a taste and
mhm,
you were to be in that job that you really want, live that relationship that you really want, you're that parent that you want to be and you envision, and you're in this part of the country and you're doing all the things and you've felt it and you get to live that, you would work your ass off for that job, that life. You would work your ass off to get there because you know what it is that you're working towards. It's the same kind of dedication as parents when they have kids and they've got to figure out a way to make money. It's like you're devoted to it. You're like, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm going to do it and it's important. But that is something that is like a draw, right? It's like that draw, that desire to do it, but you have to do it. It's a survival thing. So
mhm.
how do you, if it's not a survival thing and it's a comfort thing, how do you bridge that? To say this is beyond survival. I just really want that life. How am I going to stay motivated to go towards it?
Okay, I have 2 thoughts and a question.
Okay.
So, the first 2 things that came to mind when you asked, "How would you get there? How would you bridge that if you have no experience of it?" My 2 thoughts were, number 1, we know that we have mirror neurons.
Mm.
So, what these allow us to do is actually physically experience, have compassion for someone, have empathy, develop these systems where we can be in an experience with someone, even if it's not happening to us directly, positive or negative. It's something that we've developed where, in my mind, it's like this intuitive sense that gives us a read on someone when we really don't have words to define it. And then my other thought was, through cultivating the memory of things that are linked to that desire or dream that we have. So maybe I've never experienced what it's like to go shopping and not have to worry about how much money I have in the bank and just be able to enjoy the experience just for the experience.
Right.
But what have I done that has given me a similar feeling to that? And using the feeling of that to start to put in place the semblance of a memory of what it might actually feel like in my body. So those were my two thoughts. And then my question was, to throw it back to you, what's something that you never experienced before you actually like laid your hands on it or had it or got to live it, that you did this for? Like, what is something you were like, oh, that I want that. I've never had that. That would be really nice, but I'm going to work for it because I know I want it, because I know it's that good.
Mm,
Like, when have you had that experience before? Because I think providing people with evidence of, yeah, this can happen is really important.
yeah. Okay. Um, so I'll start with that last question. I would say the thing that I wanted most was to sell my house, leave Tampa and come to Ash. And some part of me just knew that I wanted to know what it like I wanted to know what I would do with my life
Yeah.
if I wasn't doing what I was always expecting. I mean, I knew I was going to write a book and I worked on that for a year. But there was something like I told myself, well, I mean, you always land on your feet. You can always go back. You
Mm,
you would you would be fine. Like you've got plenty of options. But I wonder what you would do if you weren't exhausted all the time. If you weren't completely stressed out all the time. If you had the freedom and flexibility to hike every day and be in the sunlight and get fresh air and have a slower pace and your nervous system wasn't always firing and you weren't always being reminded of like not being okay and you
mm,
actually got to feel joy and happy every day. I wonder what would happen, what life would feel like or be like, or what I could accomplish if I just started with kind of a redo. If I just started with this and
mhm,
then this, yes, and this is an emphatic yes. What if I just laid one emphatic yes on top of the other and just started only making decisions and it's like, yeah, that's Asheville. Yep,
mm,
definitely Asheville. Okay. Well, I know that. So put the house on the market, so that means I'm also going to have to pack up the house. I'm going to have to get a moving company. It started a whole list of things, but it was like each decision after that, I was like, I just know that the yes is what I'm acting towards. And then it would always get to a point where there was another decision that I had to make. Like, okay, the book, it's harder in the publishing business now to get a contract than it used to be. So you gonna go back or are you gonna do something different? I'm not gonna go back. Okay, well, what are you gonna do? I guess I'm gonna do my own thing. And I was like, huh, yeah, something about that feels right. No idea how, and so I was like, okay, well, what would one do to figure it out? I'm gonna go get a score mentor. There's free mentors. You start talking about it. You start asking people. Like when you get locked up inside yourself, that's when something dies. But if you talk about it, then the people who love you are like, ooh, how about this? How about that? When you get nudged to tell, when you're relaxed and calm and you're trusting your intuition and you get nudged to ask a random person that you know about some part of your situation and they have an answer, follow it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, there's something to some part of me knew some things and knew that I got curious of what would happen if I just followed what I did know in the absence of knowing the whole thing. And it was just my know, like my
Yeah.
KNOW. I knew this for myself. I was like, yeah, I know this. And when I know something this much, it's always a yes. Like if it feels this good and immediately, it's a yes.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It's a yes. So I literally would have to make a conscious choice to do something against my highest good because I know my highest good is always going to be like, yes. Like I'm 100% sure of that every time. And just because I don't understand how it's going to work or be viable, I just keep facing that over and over and over with trust that if I keep walking a path and I do the steps that come towards me, I will walk into something that is sustainable and viable for me.
Mm-hmm. I think that is the biggest obstacle when it comes to this topic that we could raise, is that it's relatively easy to find your emphatic yes. Like most people really do know what it is. It's the overthinking and the failure to ground it in action and evidence. And when you combine that, when you're overthinking and you let fear come in, and then because you've overthought and you've allowed fear, then you're not willing to take a step to actually put some real meat on the bones of the idea, then the idea just kind of withers and dies because, like you said, I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know how it's going to be viable. So I just don't do it.
Yeah.
And that's where emphatic yeses die.
Mm-hmm.
They die in this graveyard of fear.
Yeah. But here's the really cool thing is once you start paying attention and you know this in your life, like you've seen this, once we start paying attention and we know that an emphatic yes is actually our part. Our part is to say the emphatic yes, is to be honest with ourselves and
Yep.
put it out into the universe and send that beacon of yes. Oh my gosh, this is so good for me. Once we do that, then the universe is going to give us a solution that will reach whatever it is that we're looking for. But are we open? Like whatever solution comes up is going to be so much better than what we would come up with. Like when I start getting involved in it and I start drumming up solutions of something that I have no experience in this area, but somehow I think my ideas are going to be spectacular. But if I just put the idea out there that this is what I want, this is my why, then the universe is going to bring something to me. And it's like, I'm going to be like, oh, I've got 6 hours today to work on this project and I'm drumming up all kinds of stuff to do. And the universe is like, hey, call Jerry Maguire. Call that guy. And you're like, why do I want to talk to Jerry Maguire? I've got 6 hours of work to do. I'm not calling Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
And it's like, hang on a second. We think that's our distractibility. It's not our distractibility. The universe is like, hey, Jerry Maguire's looking for the same thing that you are, but you don't know that there's a way that you two are going to align on this. And it's a win-win. It's a windstorm of wins because this guy has the resources you need to do what it is you want to do. And all you got to do is make the call. But instead, Instead of it being done in 10 minutes, you want to spend 6 hours to never even make headway.
Yeah.
And if you start like this is what got me excited. We don't get taught this. But when you start doing it and you start paying attention and you start saying, I'm gonna document. I got this nudge and I'm gonna see what happens. And then you follow that nudge through, and all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, wow, that kind of worked. Well, that's curious. And then you do it again and you get the nudge, and then you just ask yourself, well, where did this lead? If you just keep getting curious, you'll start to notice that these ideas and the emphatic yeses are like leading you somewhere. And it may not be to the thing, but it may be to the next thing that gets you to the thing. But paying attention makes a difference.
So I love how our conversations flow perfectly into the next thing that I was thinking.
What you got?
Well, I have a question that I'm going to table for later. I'm going to put a star around it because it's not flowing directly. But what I had written down was, you said we don't get taught this, and there's a really good reason for that. It is literally impossible for someone else to teach you this. It is completely 100% a personal physical process that you have to live and experience and experiment with. So I'm going to go back to this article because this paragraph, it's going to start off talking about something that sounds there we go. Sorry. Start off talking about something that sounds like it's not related. But if we can think of it as, when this article says symbol, when it's referring to a symbol, let's take that symbol to mean this thought or idea we have that's ungrounded in our bodies. So it's like that dream you have that currently is just kind of floating around, that doesn't have any way to plug into this physical experience. So the paragraph says, never leaving the head or the computer to determine what a symbol is referring to in the external world would mean an infinite regress of search for meaning. We can only break from the symbol grounding problem if the symbols refer to something in our external world, that is, have reference that ground those symbols in perception, action, and or emotion. This grounding represents the meaning of the symbol. The embodied approach to cognition argues that all knowledge is grounded in sensory, perceptual, and motoric processes, and that these processes are a function of one's own morphology, shape and size, and physiology, internal processes. So that's even referring to, if I were to be in some different country and I saw a symbol and I had no connection to what that symbol meant, that is the disconnect we're talking about when we're talking about these ideas. We can't translate them. We have no reference point to translate them, just as if we would have no reference point to translate a foreign language, for example. So how do we start creating a field, a grid to plug that into?
Well, that leads back to, I'd like to go there now, but that leads back to something that you said that I would like to say, let's have it be a hypothesis, because I'm not sure it is true, something that you said, but I'm open to, I'm not sure. You said it's impossible for someone to teach you this. I don't think it's impossible for someone to teach you. I think
I think we're agreeing, even though we say we're disagreeing. Like, the way that I mean it's impossible is that, like, I wouldn't be able to say to you, well, this is what it feels like when this happened. Like, it's I'm talking
Yes.
about it for me.
Yes. Yeah.
True. Could I tell you about a process that would help you? Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that makes sense. Like, I can't say what it feels like to me, and you can't say what it feels like to you, and that transfer to somebody else as their experience, and they can identify with it and say, oh yeah.
Right.
I got you. Yeah, totally. But I do think that kind of where we start in my mind is when we want something really deeply, and it's something that we want to accomplish while we're here, or an experience that we want to have while we're here.
Mhm.
Uh, there's the saying, I can't go get it, but it's about like once we make the decision to do something, providence will move. Like every provision that we need to make something happen will move. And so I think when there's something that we want, if we can just keep circling it, if we can just keep like if you don't know what it takes to feel what it would feel like, if you know that to reach your dreams, you have to feel what it feels like to receive the dreams before they occur. And then somebody else says, "Oh, you also have to be like the vibration of what it is that you're moving towards." And then somebody else says, "Oh, you also have to do whatever it is." If there's 100 things, you got to circle it. You got to keep bringing it to your consciousness because it's not a one and done concept. It's something that you've got to like look at from multiple sides
Mm.
so that you like can see it in totality. And then one day, unbeknownst to you that it's today, you're going to be looking at that topic and all of it's going to come together and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I mean, I have goosebumps now because I know those moments. Oh my gosh, I know what this means. And it's like you were circling it because you suspected it was really big.
Mm.
And some part of you was like, I need to keep circling this because there's something here. So this is when you're a manifester and you're focusing on manifesting all the time. Keep focusing on it. And you're like, well, it doesn't always work. No, it may not always work. But to understand it over and over and over and to hear it from 100 different people's perspective. Somebody's going to have a perspective and say it in a way that when you hear it, it clicks and you're like, oh my gosh, this, I
Yeah.
needed this to move forward. The
Mhm.
next step.
Here's your quote from William H. Murray. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there's one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance which no one could have dreamed would have come their way. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now.
Mm-hmm. And why would you begin it? Why would you do it? Because there's some part of you that already knows, you're already excited about it. Some part of you, every single time you move towards something that you're really excited about, there's a reason why you're excited about it. It's like the first time that you go on a jet ski and you're like, oh my God, that was amazing. Or the first time you go to Key West and you're like, that place was amazing. I've been wanting to go there forever. Or this dream vacation you've been wanting to go to Greece that you're like, oh my gosh. So when you commit yourself, even though you don't exactly know, some part of you is saying yes.
Mm.
You know that it's worth it. How many times in your life do you do something because you're like, that's going to be worth it?
Mm.
You've never eaten dinner there, but that's going to be worth it. You go out with this person, you're like, this is going to be worth it. Right? You just got to keep following those things that you've never done it before, but you keep doing it. You keep saying, oh, well, I'm going to try it.
The American psychologist Abraham Maslow would say, it's because what one can be, one must be.
Mm,
What one can be, one must be. We're experiential and experimental beings.
I
So if we
love
can
that.
dream it and think it, then we have to do it. We must.
Well, there's some part of us that desires it and will not be content until we experience it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think also like this gets back to you got to make a decision to move forward with it or to let it rest. But it's making that conscious decision to not give up on something before you recognize that what this actually is going to feel like and when you experience it may actually be worth the effort that you're going towards. Like,
Oh my gosh, I just thought of a study that I remember that is going to help bring this home.
okay.
Um, and I don't know if I'm going to find it, but there was, I think it was a study on like basketball players, and they had one group of basketball players not practice, not think about practicing, do nothing. And then they had another group of basketball players think about shooting the perfect free throw shot and think it over and over and see it and feel it, but all in their heads, never actually holding a ball, never actually on the court, just thinking through it. And then they had one group do it, practice it. And then they had them all shoot free throws, I believe it was. And the
Hmm.
group that performed the best was the group that thought about it and rehearsed it in their head.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that
Interesting.
makes sense. Makes sense because they were still refreshed and feeling good, and they also weren't mentally confused by having just missed a whole bunch. The ones that just
Exactly.
practiced were like now entering into shooting, but they had just missed several.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the ones who were practicing made
Every
basket
single
after
one in
basket
their head.
after basket. Yeah,
Yep.
that makes
Yep.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. That's
Yeah.
really cool. But they still had to shoot.
Yeah.
They still had to shoot. And this
And
is
they had to
where
go out there
like
and
it
do it.
gets
Yep.
where it gets down to you still have to show up. So you can like all of this mental practice that we do for different things. It will come to a point where you can't manifest any further until you act in a way that you move beyond thinking.
Okay, so I just thought of this real life example that I had recently, so it's fresh. Something that switched in me. Um, so so where I was at the beginning ish of this like school year was I was in that position that you described, where I've got to figure out a way to make money. I'm a mom. It has to happen. It's a matter of survival. I've got kids to feed. So I've got to do it. So I was a little bit feeling kind of desperate. Um, Now I have a bachelor's degree. I have a master's degree. I've got a decade of experience in education. So it's not like I was going into looking for a job with nothing. Um, but because of my posture of kind of desperation, I settled for a position that I thought was the only thing I could get. And I loved my work and I loved where I was working. I chose the culture deliberately, but I thought that given the hours I could work and my situation, that I could only be valued at a certain amount, that I was kind of stuck there. And then I had an experience that totally shifted that. And it was not something that I kind of prompted. It was someone had reached out to me for a position that I thought was closed and asked me to work with them. And it was immediately double what I was making. So all of a sudden it shifted something in my head that said, oh, you're worth way more. Like someone else values you way more. And you can have more freedom than this job that you have right now and get paid more than what you're getting paid. You can have that. And that set me on this new trajectory. And then just like a month ago, I had the first job interview I've had in like a long time, like 5 or so years. But I headed into that interview in a totally different space because I knew, and I knew because I had embodied knowledge of it, of what I was worth. And
Mhm.
I knew that I didn't need the job that I was
Mhm.
applying for. That I'd had an experience of someone reaching out to me and offering me a position that I didn't even realize was on the table. So I knew I'm worth more. Jobs come to me that are aligned for me, and I can go into this interview with all of that. And so when I walked in, I was relaxed. We had a great conversation. It was open and honest and vulnerable, and she cried and I cried, and we shared life stories and we connected. And ultimately, they gave me the job, but I didn't take it. But it was a totally different experience because all of a sudden I know the right opportunities come to me. There's no
Mhm.
work that I have to do for them.
Yeah.
So every interview that I have from here on out is going to be a completely different experience because of this embodied knowledge that I have.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's not something that anybody could have relayed to you, even if
Right.
myself or anybody else had said, "Oh, this is, you're worth so much more and you can make twice as much," and blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is that's not your experience yet.
Right.
And so it
Yep.
takes actually having that happen for
Yeah.
you to be like, "Oh, this is a thing." Like this is my experience. And then once it's your truth, then everything adjusts around you, and you'll still be given an opportunity to change your mind.
Hmm.
The universe will say, if you want to go back or you want to accept this other job, you can,
Yep.
but you're also then being given, like, it's interesting, once we don't have a necessity for the outcome, then the right outcome for us is a lot clearer because we know it, we feel it, and we don't have the pressure of taking it. Because we were like, oh well, I know if I make this decision and it's against what's in my body, it's not going to work out. So when we take positions that we're like, I don't really want to do this, but I'll do it because it's not going to be pretty. We're
Hmm.
already starting from a place of not this,
Yeah.
and what we think is that something else won't show up.
Yes.
Something else will show up if we leave space for this,
Yeah.
but it can't show up if we're doing not this.
So how do we get real clear and shift the feeling of this outcome is a necessity? How do we move away from that?
Well, I mean, the first thing is just to recognize that it's a thing. Like when we recognize that the harder we hold on to something and the more we need something, the further we're pushing it away. And that is just a scientific fact. Once you realize that, then by taking that stance, every single time you're met with, oh gosh, it didn't work out. There's hopefully a seed that we're saying, oh gosh, it's taking me a long, like it's okay, but I'm not getting this. It's hard to believe. And I think sometimes people do really believe that it can't happen. But the reality is that nobody can stop you from believing something that's not true and living your life to the result of something that could be different. So
Mhm.
if you want something different, you have to do something different and you have to test it out. You
Yep.
have to stand with it. And it's not one and done. It's not like I remember that last Thursday I really believed. I felt really good. Like had the job interview and I was like, I don't care. It doesn't really matter. Really? Did you? Or was some part of you like, why aren't they calling? How long is it going to be? Those little deposits of fear are you might as well be thinking it full on.
Yep.
It's sends the same uncertainty into the universe. And so the practice then becomes practicing uncertainty and being okay with uncertainty. Start
Mhm.
it with small things. Start it with, I love to have reservations for dinner. And tonight I'm like, I don't know. Let's don't make plans.
Mhm.
What if we can't get in? Well, I don't know. Where are we going to end up? This is going to be interesting. We might end up at the grocery store and have to go home. Okay, maybe.
So what I
But
hear you saying
seriously,
is don't make reservations for your birthday dinner. Got it. Okay.
I kind of like the ambiguity and the uncertainty.
We're leaving it up to
Right
you
now,
for when we
right
go to
now,
bed.
I have no knowledge of what to do in Albany. Albany? Albany?
Albany.
Albany.
You need an
Albany.
upstate New York accent. Albany, New York.
Albany, New York. So I don't know what to do there. I don't know where to eat. So I'm not missing anything. I'm not like, oh gosh, it's got a Dewey's pizza and I have to eat it. By the way, if it has Dewey's pizza, we're going there.
I don't know what Dewey's Pizza is. That is an unembodied piece of knowledge.
Okay. Well, if once you
Don't
had
know what
it,
I'm missing.
once you have it, you'll be like, does this city have a Dewey's pizza? In fact, I'm looking it up. All right.
Good.
So that's what I got.
Great. We're on the pizza string, which means we'll never get her back. We might as well close the show right now.
Actually, I'm going for pizza in an hour.
Well, good
Going
for
for
you.
pizza in an hour.
Way to
Yeah.
treat yourself.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
yeah, that's all I've got too. I think I really
I'll
feel
just
solid about offering this up for people to have a way to start working with this.
yeah. Yeah. I just want to end with something that the reason why this topic was so important to me was so many times when I reach something that I was scared to go for, it's so much better than what I thought. Like, and I knew it was going to be amazing. Like every time I reach a goal that I'm like, man, I've been holding for this. Every single time I've left space for the thing that I really want, and instead of taking the thing that I'm willing to settle for because I'm not sure that I can reach this goal. Every single time I go for it and I receive it, every single time it's worth it. And it's like it surpasses, like way surpasses what I could have theoretically known. And I just want to end with this example. So today I've I knew that I had to work at 1:30, but I had all morning. I got up. I was like, you know what? It'd be great. Wake up and sleep in. But I was like, but I could also, I love hiking and I really want the exercise and I want to go outside in nature. And so I got up and I went this morning and I did it and I got out there, but it was because I could lean on, uh, I know what it's like to have breakfast at this place that I'm going to. Oh, I know what it's like to drive the whole way to this place that I'm hiking to. I know what it's like to hike on that trail and to sit on that rock and meditate. I went through the whole thing and I was like, is that better? Is that what I would want to experience over I got to sleep in an hour later? Right. And I was like, yeah, of course I want. If I hadn't have known what that experience was, but I had designed that for myself and I had said, I'm going to go to this place and I'm going to do this and this, it wouldn't have been as compelling. It wouldn't have been as compelling. So a segue to that of what I wanted to do this morning would have been, oh, I remember what it was like to get up early in the morning and have a warm cup of coffee and to be like on the road pre-dawn and like you're going somewhere and you're going to do something and you're all excited. I know what that's like. Okay, well that can draw me into this. But the point is that there's got to be some part of your experience, even one little thing that you can say, even that one little thing, going for coffee early in the morning pre-dawn with maybe some fog in a field is more important than sleeping an hour later. Yeah. Even that alone, anything else is icing on the cake. Right. So recognizing that sometimes the decision has to be smaller. It's just this or that, a small little part of it that you already know is compelling, can get you out the door so that you start on this practicing and this curiosity train of like, huh, when some part of me is like, yeah, do this, I want to know if it works out or not. Like, we got to get some practice and experience with every time you get nudged. Don't pass.
Mm-hmm.
That's like something that's really meant to give you like this awesome experience.
Well, I'm like super pumped and excited now that we've had this conversation to go try something that I've been thinking about doing for a long time and haven't done yet because I haven't done it. And so I don't know how good it is, but everyone keeps telling me how good it is and that I should
What are you
do it.
doing?
It's so silly. There's this thrift store in
Uh-huh.
our region that everyone's always like, this place is amazing. There's always so
Dude,
much good stuff there. And I'm like,
go.
we should go check it out. And then I'm like, but it could just be another thrift store. But literally everyone who's ever gone has told me, you've got to go there. It's so good.
You're
So,
going.
well, yeah, I'm going to pack Eliana up in the car and we're going to go check it out.
Do it.
Did you hear that? She goes,
Yes. Yes.
what we're going to
It's
go do. I'll
happening.
report back because, I mean, so what got me there other than this conversation and recognizing that I don't have the experience of it. So how would I know?
Exactly. That's why you're passing.
Is the mirror neuron thing. Well, all these other people have had this incredible experience. So what would that be like for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna end with this. If you're walking past a restaurant and there's a long line, just get in the line. Just get in the line. If it's known to give people amazing experiences, and we as the most rushed society in the world is willing to stand in line to get this food, get in line.
Noted. Okay. A special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover art. You can find out more about her at melissamossart.com. And thank you to Cloud Cult for our intro and outro music from their song There's So Much Energy in Us, both of whom should have lines out the door for both of their studios. We love you.
Totally.
Thank you so much. And you can check us out on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, friends, thank you for listening. We wish you peace, love, and light.